Hi, it's KCCK's Culture Crawl. I'm Dennis Green, and Steve Shanley is back for Cedar Rapids Municipal Band, Week 2. A couple of good concerts to get things started off with last week. Now we're just barreling through the season.
We are, and we're on to featuring my favorite component of the Cedar Rapids Municipal Band, which is our Young Artist Competition, which I started my very first year as an opportunity to feature some of the great talent we have in the area. And one of the things that I noticed is there were a lot of opportunities for students to audition for All-State, to play in honor bands, things like that, but fewer opportunities for them to get to play solos with a band. And that is so much different than playing a solo with just a piano player. And I thought some of these students need the opportunity to get to do this. And one of the reasons they don't get this opportunity is high school bands, even the very best ones, in order to learn some of these accompaniments, that takes a lot of time. And in a lot of cases, the accompaniments are just far too difficult for those bands to play. So I thought, well, we got this great band. Let's go ahead and showcase some students. So every year we have a winner of the Margaret Kegel Scholarship for the top placing student, and then we usually feature a couple of runner-up students as well. And this week we've got our winner right off the bat here early in the season because he needs to jaunt off to Europe with the Iowa Ambassadors of Music. So we've got Camden Neff from Kennedy High School on the saxophone.
Camden, who started off at KCCK's jazz band camp many moons ago.
Yes.
And has had a great career at Kennedy. I know he made various all-state bands, and he actually was featured soloist with his guest artist, Ryan Smith, a couple of years ago at the Corridor Jazz Project. It's not unheard of, but it's also not often that we have our adult guest artist and what is really a duo performance with one of the students. But they both just nailed it. It was great.
Yeah, he's a wonderful player, and I think he and Ryan picked a very entertaining piece that I think the crowd will like. I got to admit, sometimes I get a little nervous when it's a saxophone player because there's a lot of contemporary saxophone repertoire that is, let's just say, not super easy to hear or listen to, especially on first pass. Some of those composers take great delight in all of the technical things the saxophone can do, as well as the modern harmonies and melodies and rhythms and so forth. So sometimes for the audience, when they hear, contemporary saxophone, they think, I'm not going to like that. You're going to like this one, I promise.
It gets the Steve Shanley seal of approval.
It's my audience seal of approval. Yeah, there's various Steve Shanley seals of approval. Like from a composer standpoint, I remember one time going over a score for something with Tim Hankowich. This was probably 10 years ago. And he said, yeah, I get it. I understand it. I understand why it's good. I just don't like it, and I'm never going to program it. And this is not one of those pieces. So that got a seal of approval in a different way. Different types of seals of approval. Yes, good piece of music. I'm just never going to program it. But this one is great. Camden's great. You're going to love it.
What else is on the program?
Well, we'll have Joel Nagel featured a little bit on a TD's Boogie Woogie, which is a Tommy Dorsey composition, and that's kind of a favorite that I have on the rotation in the band now. And I wanted to perform it last week, but Joel was not in the band last week, and I always kind of like to save that to make sure he's going to be in the group. So he'll get a little bit of love on TD's Boogie Woogie. And then also, it was 100 years ago, 1925, that the book that inspired Porgy and Bess was written. So Porgy and Bess was written in 1935 by the Gershwins. But the book that inspired them to write that, I think entitled just Porgy, was written in 1925. So we have a very cool arrangement of music from the Porgy and Bess opera that was sitting in the Municipal Band library that I just found. It has been there all along, but there's so many titles in that library. And every summer I kind of try and go through and find at least a few that are in there that I wasn't aware of, and found that one. And it's wonderful. So excited to celebrate that centennial of the book, not necessarily the music, but, I'll find any connection I can. And then we've also got some highlights from the Jungle Book for the kids. And then last week we performed a lesser-known Sousa march called Solid Men to the Front. And this week we perform an even lesser-known Sousa march that David Lang, euphonium player in the band, pointed out to me near the end of last year. It's very cool. It's called Fauché Tower Washington Memorial, which might be Sousa's longest titled march. But that's particularly fun because I have a long-running joke with Chris Bird, who plays tuba in the band, and he loves all music. He's a true musical omnivore. He digs it all, but he really does not like the 6/8 Sousa marches. So those are the marches that are like as opposed to a 2/4 Sousa march, which would be more like he doesn't like the 6/8 Sousa marches. So I'm on this mission to find one that he might actually like. And so we'll find out after the concert on Wednesday at Noelridge Park, like what his verdict is after he has performed it for the audience.
So once again, you get the schedule of the concerts and you get a free lesson in meter and time.
Yes, there you go. Yes, compound versus simple meter. There you go.
So you mentioned Noelridge Park, so that's the Wednesday concert.
Noelridge Park Wednesday concert, and then Bever Park for the Sunday concert. And at the Bever Park concert, if you show up at 6:30, we have a performance by the Cedar Rapids Youth Flute Ensemble, which is under the direction of our librarian and flutist Amy Kraplin, who also teaches over at Linmar. So that group of outstanding flutists will perform at 6:30.
Well, week 2 of the Cedar Rapids Municipal Band again, and now after week 1, you start off in some different locations. What I kind of think of, even though you've played both the History Center and McGrath for a long time, when you start settle into the park rotation, I think now the Muni Band season is in full swing.
Once we get the Ellis Beaver Sunday rotation and show up at Noelridge, yes, we do love playing in the parks, and it's nice. I'm starting to see some of the trees come back, fill in a little bit. It isn't quite as depressing as it was a few years ago when we had to play that first concert at Beaver after all of the trees were decimated. So it's starting to look more scenic, and of course, still sounds great.
One other thing, too, that we should mention, because you do talk about this periodically, is the concerts are at a manageable length, and kids are always welcome. You never have to worry about your child being a disruptive force because it's in the park. They can run around, they can make much noise as they want, and usually there's a playground nearby.
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up. Yes, the concerts are at 7:30. We have thought about moving them a little bit earlier to try and make them a little more kid-friendly. And I will go around the audience before and after the concerts and sometimes just kind of informally poll the young families. And most of them say, yeah, actually, this is nice because it's not quite as hot. So
not quite as hot. Gives you a chance to get supper and everything squared away,
exactly.
And then when they get home, right to bed.
But yeah, exactly. We love having the kids there, and I know that if you go to a symphony orchestra concert, it would be great embarrassment, or a Broadway show if your kids started talking in the middle of it or asking questions. And for me and for the musicians in the band, we love it because it means the kids are excited about something. And even if what they are excited about is the slide or the swings that they want to go play on, we're totally good with that too.
Cedar Rapids Municipal Band, Noelridge Park, and Bever Park this week. And you can visit the band online at crmuniband.org, right?
Correct. Or Facebook.
Okay. Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Dennis.
You can hear the Culture Crawl live on the radio most weekdays at 10:30, on demand at kcck.org/culture, or subscribe using your favorite podcast player. Watch our videos on the KCCK Facebook and YouTube channels. Our producer is Lydia Kilgore. The Culture Crawl theme is composed by Vivian Shanley. I'm Dennis Green, and I'll talk to you later.